Hey everyone, welcome back to the series on project development with Node.js. In this video, we are going to set up the complete authentication system for our user model. The authentication system is almost mostly a common module, right? You have to just set up the authentication once in your API and things would be done. On the internet, you will find a lot of tutorials where you will be finding authentication system, but not in the API format, rather than in a server-side rendered web page authentication format from where you have an HTML and you are going to send a, I would say, login. You have a login button, then you write email, password, and all. But in this video, we are going to set up this whole authentication system in an API kind of format, so that no matter whether you are going to like trying to log in, or I would say authenticate from a web page, mobile app, any other service, etc., things are going to work exactly fine. So without any further delay, let's just start. So before we actually start, we need to set up few packages that are going to actually help us in order to set up the whole project. Just a moment. Right. So we'll say we'll use npm in order to do this. So first of all, we need bcrypt. So npm install bcrypt. Why bcrypt? Because whenever we, let's say, want to create a user, currently we'll be creating user and we'll be also storing the email and password. Now we don't want to store raw passwords for the users. We want to store the password in an encrypted format. Otherwise, as a developer, you will be able to see the password of every user and there is no, I would say, privacy. So in order to encrypt the password, we are going to use the library bcrypt, right? I'll be using the 4.0.1 version for bcrypt. Right. So you can just add that, mention it, and things will be done. Right. Okay. So we have added this package. Apart from that, we will also install body parser. Body parser. Right. And I'll be having 1.19.0 version. What is body parser? Using body parser, you will be able to send request.body in a JSON format for your post request. I believe everybody is already aware about that. Then we also need something called as JSON web token. So npm install JSON web token, and we are going to use the version 8.5.1. I'm using these specific versions because these are like the stable ones, and definitely I have at least worked on them. So to save time and make sure that there is no error that are coming up, I'm using these versions. Right. We already have Mongoose. Now we need to set up a new, we need to install a new package called as Passport. So Passport.js is a very famous package that is used for authentications in Node.js. It's like simple, unobtrusive authentication in Node.js, and it's like very widely used. It's like one of the most, I would say, highly used packages in the npm world. Right. So what we are going to do, we are going to install Passport. Right. We are going to install Passport with 0.4.1. The version that we are going to use is 0.4.1. We'll install it. Things are done. Also, I didn't tell you about JSON web token. So we'll be using the JWT mechanism, the JSON web token mechanism, in order to authenticate our API. So every time when we will be logging in, we'll be getting a JWT token, and then using that token every time we are going to authenticate the user. Apart from that, for using this JWT based authentication system in Passport, we need to install Passport JWT, and we'll be using the version 4.0.0. Right. And at last, we need one more package. This is also a Passport package only, Passport local. Right. Just a moment. Let me see which version should work. So version should be at 1.0.0. Okay. So Passport local is also going to help us to actually set up the overall strategies. What is strategy? We'll talk about it in the the upcoming part of the videos. But like strategy is going to help us to actually make sure that we are having the logic for login, sign up, and everything. Right. So these are the packages that we require. Okay. Now we already have our user model setup. So this user model setup is there, right, already. Now what we can do is, first of all, we can add something like called as, so let's say, we will say user schema. dot pre. What is pre? What is pre? This is something that we have to understand, right? So in databases, there is a concept of triggers, right? So trigger is like a function that gets executed at different life cycle of an object creation, or I would say a new entry creation. So I would say pre means before, and the time in the life cycle is save. So before we actually save any data of the user, we are going to execute a function. And what is the function? This is going to be an asynchronous function, right? Right, we'll be passing the next middleware. This next is going to be the next middleware, like whatever is the next function to be executed, we'll do that, right? And just a moment. Okay, and now what we are going to do is we are going to say const user is equals to this. The current object that you are going to come up with is going to be the user, right? And then we'll say const hash is equals to await bcrypt. So we need to require bcrypt. So const bcrypt is equals to require bcrypt, and we'll say bcrypt dot hash, and now we will be passing the password. So this dot password, and this hash also expects one more I would say, so this is the data, and then it expects salts or round, that how many times it should be hashed. So I'll say the number of rounds we expect is 10. You can pass any arbitrary number here, and then we have got this hash. This is the hash of the password of the user. So inside this object you have the user, and the user's password we are fetching inside this function, right? So I would say let's name this let's not keep it anonymous, let's name it as encrypt password. So inside this encrypt password function, we are going to actually get this password and actually create a hash out of it that is encrypted, and then we'll say this dot password is equals to hash. So we'll update the password in the, so this object is going to have this whole user object that we are going to get from the API, and inside this dot password we are going to get update with it with a new hash. It's the encrypted hash, right? And then we'll call next. That is the next callback, next middleware function, whatever it wants to execute, right? Okay, and then what we are going to do, this was a trigger. So let me add some comments here. So pre-save is a trigger that gets a function and executes it before a user object is saved. Okay, now what we can do here is, one second, we can add a method also. So in databases we also have methods with us. So we'll say user schema dot methods dot is valid password. So I'll write a method is valid password. This will be also asynchronous function. Check validity. It is going to get a password every time, and then we'll say const user is equals to this, right? Const compare is equals to await bcrypt dot compare, and what should we compare? The password that the user has entered, right, and the current user's password, and we'll return compare. True or false, whatever we get, we'll return compare. Okay, so it is going to get the new password that the user is entering from the API, like that is we are getting as the data, and user's current password is going to compare. So it is going to compare the hash for both, right? This is something very important. Okay, so this part is ready. This part is ready. So I'll add a quick commit. So get add all. Setup for basic user schema with pass encryption done. Okay, so I have added one more commit. If you see git log, we have a bunch of commits now, right? Sure. Now let's do one thing. Okay, so we have our is valid password thing ready, and we have our user schema dot pre-save is ready, right? Now what I can do is, let's try to see that whether we are actually be able to encrypt the data or not. So this this user object we generally used to create, right? So I'm having it here, and let's say we start the server npx nodemon index.js. Okay, see, now we are actually creating the user object, and the password is encrypted. Now you are not able to see 12345 is the password, right? It's an encrypted string. So this is something really very important, right? We are actually able to create the user with this encrypted password. Now we are going to use this mechanism. So let's, for the timing, comment this out. We are going to use this mechanism later also, so that we are able to set up the whole authentication process. In this video, we have just barely started the authentication setup. In the further upcoming videos, we are going to set up rest of the things that are required to actually make the user authenticate in our application. That being said, let's just wrap it up here. We are going to meet very, very soon in the next video. Till then, take care, guys. Bye-bye, and thank you.